Chapter 444. Flame Restraint. Boom. 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 Continuous explosions echoed from the 166th floor, as one magic circle after another unfolded inside and outside the main building. Abyssal magic and spatial magic intertwined, releasing a suffocating aura that spread through the high sky. Lin Chia stood at the center of the devastated venue, his eyes shining like stars. The deep blue robe behind him billowed without wind, his lips moving as if chanting something, and the dense magical elements nearly lifted the entire floor. Within the destructive range of magic, a blue figure collided rapidly with another figure wielding a spear. Bailey Xian's clothes were already charred in large patches, his face dark with frustration. He felt an indescribable sense of suffocation. It wasn't that he couldn't evade Lin Chia's magic, but every time he tried to escape the bombardment zone, Jialon would forcibly hold him back, forcing them both to endure the magical onslaught together. This was nothing for Jialon, but Bailey Xian did not have the protection of immortality, and could only rely on the shield made of black sand to withstand the attacks time and again. Unfortunately, Lin Chia's magical assaults were too dense, and even the shield sometimes couldn't deploy in time. Bailey Xian dodged Jialon's attack and thrust his spear back. This time he had learned his lesson and did not strike at Jialon but aimed directly at Lin Chia, who was chanting magic. Lin Chia narrowed his eyes slightly, and in the next moment, spatial magic shifted his form to another position. His left hand pressed against the void and he slowly spoke. Shaping magic, Xian Iron Cone. A cyan magic circle blossomed in front of him, dense black lines extending from the circle, intertwining to form a large cone with a radius of over 3 meters, quietly hovering in midair. Lin Chia's right hand then raised and the kinetic longsword, Qiyuan, lightly struck the tip of the Xian Iron Cone. Buzz. The terrifying kinetic energy bestowed by Qiyuan erupted instantly, and the massive cone vanished from in front of Lin Chia, rushing towards Bailey Xian's body at nearly teleportation speed with a piercing sound. Bailey Xian's pupils constricted. In the blink of an eye, the tip of Bailey Xian's spear met the tip of the Xian Iron Cone. The terrifying golden beam instantly melted the body of the Xian Iron Cone, but the residual kinetic energy at the tip still acted on the spear, directly knocking it out of Bailey Xian's hand. Bailey Xian reached out, wanting to grab the golden spear suspended in midair, when a familiar voice echoed in his ear again. Chaos of the Universe. Not far away, Bailey Pangpang stood on the Taiji diagram, extending his hand towards the golden spear in midair. The golden spear hesitated, avoiding Bailey Xian's outstretched hand, and under the effect of disarm, it flew straight in another direction, ultimately landing in Bailey Pangpang's grasp. You. Bailey Xian watched helplessly as his forbidden item flew away, turning sharply to glare at Bailey Pangpang, his eyes filled with rage. Bailey Pangpang weighed the golden spear in his hand, sneering, "What about me?" He aimed the spear at Bailey Xian and thrust it forward. The golden beam pierced through space, directly targeting Bailey Xian's face. The latter quickly dodged, only to collide with the fearless Jialon's flying kick, sending him flying like a sandbag for several meters. Black sand surged like a tide beneath Bailey Xian, catching his body steadily. Bailey Xian steadied himself on the black sand, wiping the blood from the corner of his mouth, his gaze turning sharp. He pulled out a small black porcelain bottle from his pocket, flicked open the cap with his thumb, and in the next moment, raging black flames erupted from the bottle's mouth, sweeping outward like a volcanic eruption, quickly covering half the venue. Lin Chia's figure flickered, retreating beyond the range of the black flames, while Bailey Pangpang also stepped back on the Taiji diagram, avoiding the scorching wave of fire. Jialon stood amidst the raging flames, her bright eyes fixed on Bailey Xian, showing no intention of leaving. Bailey Xian raised his hand holding the porcelain bottle, and a swirling black fire vortex gathered behind him, ultimately transforming into a 2-meter-tall flame demon, grinning menacingly at the others. Ding dong. A crisp notification sound rang out as the elevator door slowly opened nearby. Inside the elevator, the madman Chao Yuan, also surrounded by black flames, stood there obediently, holding a straight knife with a frustrated expression. Beside him, the elevator button for the 166th floor was nearly pressed to the max, with the button interface even smashed to pieces. It was unclear how long he had been in the elevator to arrive here. Finally finding the battlefield, he was about to unleash a massacre when he suddenly spotted the black fire demon not far away, tilting his head in confusion, his crimson eyes filled with curiosity. For some reason, the moment the madman Chao Yuan stepped into the fiery scene, the black fire demon's body trembled inexplicably. Chao Yuan shook his head, hefted his knife, and with a sinister grin, charged into the flames. The black flames covering the ground automatically parted to make way for him, as if deliberately avoiding the black malevolent flames surrounding Chao Yuan, while the black fire demon silently retreated a few steps. Bailey Exion's sword sheath absorbed a large amount of surrounding flames, and he swung his sword at the madman Chao Yuan. The black blade swept past Chao Yuan's body, sending him flying several dozen meters, once again falling from the 166th floor. Despair flickered in the madman Chao Yuan's eyes. At that moment, several threads suddenly wrapped around his body, halting his descent. At the edge of the floor, and Qingyu, dressed in a suit, stood quietly, looking down at the ensnared madman Chao Yuan, a shy smile appearing on his face. "If I'm not mistaken, your malevolent flames are of a higher grade than this." And Qingyu adjusted his glasses, murmuring to himself. His fingertips trembled slightly, and a tremendous force transmitted through the threads, flinging the madman Chao Yuan back into the venue, directly towards the face of the black fire demon. Chao Yuan flew out like a cannonball, the malevolent flames on him colliding with the black fire demon's body. The two flames intertwined, causing the latter's flames to shrink significantly, while the flames on Chao Yuan surged several times. The black fire demon let out a cry of surprise and immediately dispersed, retreating into the fiery scene. Chao Yuan crashed against the wall, barely managing to rise from the ground, swaying as if he had drunk fake alcohol. "You all?" Seeing the black flames shrinking by more than half, Bailey Exion's face darkened to the point of dripping water. "You've all forced me into this." He took a deep breath and pulled out his last collection from his pocket. It was a blood-soaked skull. Chapter 445, Elegy. "Dirge," Bailey Pang murmured as he looked at the skull. Bailey Exion held the skull tightly, pouring all his mental energy into it. Dots of crimson light emanated from the hollow eye sockets of the skull, as if a pair of blood-red eyes were slowly opening, incredibly eerie. It opened its mouth, and within that fleshless cavity, a half-living tongue began to tremble. The air was filled with a faint echo of song. It was a woman's voice, mournful and piercing, the lyrics indistinct. Her voice seemed to drift in and out of the ears of the crowd, making it impossible to determine from which direction it came. At the moment this voice appeared, Lin Qi felt his life force rapidly draining away. He suddenly lowered his head and discovered that his palm had unknowingly become stained with blood, countless tiny particles seeping from his skin, scattering to the ground like sand. And Qingyu, Feng Emo, Chao Yuan, and Bailey Pang were similarly affected. Only Jiaolon stood still, showing no signs of change. "Turn to dust," Bailey Exon whispered, his gaze towards the crowd filled with coldness. "Dirge. Is this really Dirge?" The ninth seat, observing the battlefield from a distance, looked at the skull in astonishment, feeling a tingling sensation on his scalp. "What is that thing?" Shin Qingzhu frowned. "Forbidden Ruins Sequence 033. Dirge. This is a terrifying ability that can turn all living beings except for the user to dust with just a song." The ninth seat continued to gaze at the blood-colored skull. About 40 years ago, a woman possessed this forbidden item. Due to her tragic experiences and dark mindset, she decided to take revenge on society. She crashed a celebrity concert, connected all the sound systems and stood on the stage singing half a song with a microphone. In less than 50 seconds, the entire concert venue and the surrounding 3 kilometers turned all living beings to dust. Over 1,000 lives, countless insects, birds, cats and dogs, ultimately forming a 20-ton mound of yellow sand. By the time the night watchers arrived, the woman had already committed suicide. Shin Qingzhu's expression grew increasingly grave beneath his mask. "If just hearing the sound turns you to dust, then wouldn't it be enough not to listen? It's not that simple." The ninth seat shook his head. "Dirge works by breaking down the physiological structure of cells through sound frequency. Even if you block your ears, as long as your body is exposed within the sound's propagation range, you will inevitably be turned to dust. This indiscriminate mass destruction weapon is, in some ways, even more terrifying than nuclear weapons. It seems Bai Li Exin is still going to turn the tide. Shen Qingzhu narrowed his eyes, watching the figures within the venue that were beginning to turn to dust, slowly raising his right hand. With me here, he won't turn the tide. Snap. The crisp sound of fingers snapping echoed through the air. In the venue, the air on the 166th floor was instantly sucked dry, the burning black flames extinguished in an instant, and the eerie voice that had been echoing in Lin Qiyi and the others' ears suddenly stopped, losing its medium of transmission. A strong sense of suffocation enveloped everyone's minds. The sandification process on Lin Qiyi's palm was interrupted. He seemed to realize something and quickly turned to look at Bai Li Pang, who was also staring back at him in shock. The sudden snap of fingers and the ensuing suffocation made them think of one person, a person who should have been dead. But now was not the time to discuss that. In the vacuum, Lin Qiyi turned to the bewildered Bai Li Exin. Through the brief sandification process and the current disappearance of sound in the vacuum, he had vaguely guessed the principle behind that forbidden item. Before they perished in this vacuum environment, they had to destroy that forbidden item. A flash of light from spatial magic flickered beneath Lin Qiyi's feet. When he reappeared, he was already behind Bai Li Exin. At that moment, Bai Li Exin, caught in the inexplicable vacuum state, had yet to understand what was happening. Seeing Lin Qiyi suddenly disappear, he hesitated slightly, and by the time he reacted, it was too late. The golden spear had been snatched away by Bai Li Pang, the fire demon bottle was suppressed by the vacuum, and dirge had also lost its effect in the vacuum. The only means he could rely on was the black sand floating around him. Just as he was about to manipulate the sand to protect his back, an ancient long sword had already swung down. The blade of Qiyuan sliced through Bai Li Exin's arm that held dirge, severing it cleanly. Blood gushed from Bai Li Exin's shoulder. Under the influence of kinetic control, the severed arm holding dirge flew out, shooting straight towards Jialan and the others. Bai Li Pang's lips moved in the vacuum, making no sound, but the next moment the Qian and Kuan beneath his feet switched places. In the chaos, the blood-colored skull flew from the severed arm into his hand. Bai Li Pang slapped the skull's jaw, forcing its mouth to close. The blood-red eyes in the skull's hollow sockets gradually extinguished, finally returning to silence. Whoosh! The air that had been sucked dry on the 166th floor returned once more. The entire process seemed complex, but it took less than 4 seconds. Lin Qiyi and the others took a deep breath of the returning air, feeling a sense of relief as if they had survived a disaster. If it hadn't been for this sudden vacuum domain, even if Lin Qiyi and Qingyu had reacted in time to forcibly take dirge from Bai Li Exin's hands, it would have taken at least 30 seconds. With the terrifying speed of sandification just now, even if they managed to stop it, nearly half of their bodies would have already vanished. At that point they would all be disabled. Bai Li Pang clutched the skull, his eyes shining brightly as he quickly scanned the surroundings, trying to find that familiar figure. Just then, a blue figure streaked across the sky, racing towards them at a speed surpassing that of a supersonic jet, leaving a straight line in the sky. His figure flew in through the floor-to-ceiling windows, the blue glow gradually fading, revealing a young figure draped in a dark red cloak, walking towards the center of the venue. Lin Qiyi and the others turned to look at the person. Bai Li Exin, who had lost an arm and was standing awkwardly in a pool of blood, squinted slightly at the figure. Yifan guessed correctly after all. The person's gaze swept over the devastated venue, finally landing on Bai Li Exin. You've truly given us a big surprise. Bai Li Exin. Chapter 446. Accusation. Suiqing. Bai Li Exin furrowed his brows slightly. What are you doing here? Suiqing walked through the chaotic venue, heading straight for Bai Li Exin, when suddenly an arm blocked his path. He paused, turning his head in confusion, and saw Jialan standing beside him in a long dress, watching him warily, looking as if she wanted to keep her distance. Suiqing smiled helplessly and pulled a shiny badge from his pocket, displaying it to the crowd. I am Suiqing, Director of the Special Operations Department of the Night Watch. Suiqing stated his identity, but Jialon stubbornly stood in front of him, seemingly unable to comprehend what he was saying. He couldn't help but add, "I'm your superior. Can you let me pass?" Jialon. Lin Qiye's voice came from behind her. Jialon turned her head and Lin Qiye gave her a look, prompting her to obediently step aside. Suiqing looked at the white-haired youth radiating magical energy and was momentarily taken aback before exclaiming in surprise, "Lin Qiye, when did you dye your hair?" Lin Qiye. Wait. Suiqing carefully sensed the aura around Lin Qiye, his expression turning puzzled. "Why do you have the aura of other deities on you? We can discuss that later." Lin Qiye skillfully shifted the topic. "Director Zhuo, what brings you here?" Although Lin Qiye was not clear about the internal structure of the Night Watch, he knew that all special teams fell under the Special Operations Department. Suiqing was indeed correct. He was the director of the Special Operations Department, making him the direct superior of all special teams. The 5th Reserve Team, while not yet a special team, still fell under his jurisdiction. This was a genuine high-ranking official of the Night Watch. "I'm your superior after all. It's our first meeting, why so cold?" Suiqing shrugged. "I'm here to arrest someone." "Arrest someone?" Lin Qiye was taken aback. Suiqing's gaze fell on the disheveled Bai Li Exen, and he cleared his throat, speaking seriously. "Bai Li Exen, chairman of the Bai Li Group and honorary high-ranking member of the Night Watch. I am here under the orders of the Supreme Commander Yi Fan to arrest you immediately on charges of unauthorized alteration of confidential documents, bribery, and murder." Upon hearing Suiqing's words, Bai Li Exen's body trembled violently. He raised his head, staring incredulously into Suiqing's eyes, seemingly unable to comprehend how Yi Fan knew all of this. After a long pause, he hoarsely replied, "I don't understand what you're saying." Suiqing sneered, "Bai Li Exen, you're just an honorary high-ranking member. Do you really think you can act with impunity within the Night Watch? Do you really believe that simply changing the photos can erase all traces of a Night Watch member's existence? What do you take the lives of the Night Watch for?" Bai Li Exen stared into Suiqing's eyes, his expression slightly changing, but his gaze remained sharp. "If I'm not mistaken, you don't have any evidence, do you?" he said with a cold smile. "Evidence is already being collected by the Intelligence Department." Suiqing's brows furrowed slightly as he stepped closer to Bai Li Exen, speaking each word deliberately. "You won't be able to push away any of the dirty deeds you've done under the banner of the Night Watch's honorary high-ranking member." Bai Li Exen's lips curled slightly and he scoffed. "Suiqing, do you really think I don't understand the rules of the Night Watch? As long as you don't have solid evidence to convict me, I'm still an honorary high-ranking member of the Night Watch, which means we are still on equal footing. Even if you want to investigate me, it must be summoned by the Night Watch military court. You have no right to arrest me." "I believe Yi Fan didn't say it that way, did he?" Suiqing's expression darkened as he stared at Bai Li Exen's mocking face. After a long silence, he slowly pulled a document from his pocket. "This is a summons from the military court. Bai Li Exen, you can't escape this." Bai Li Exen's gaze swept over the document, his eyes narrowing. "Since it's a summons from the military court, I will certainly go. But until then, I am still an honorary high-ranking member of the Night Watch." Bai Li Exen extended his hand, pointing at Lin Qiye and the others standing not far away, and coldly stated, "The 5th Reserve Team indiscriminately slaughtered 13 people, including my son Bai Li Jing, deliberately damaged Bai Li Group's facilities, attempted to kill 72 guests present, severely injured all members of the 010 team who came to uphold justice, released highly dangerous evil creatures, jeopardizing social stability, and even attempted to murder the current honorary high-ranking member of the Night Watch. I wonder if my accusations will be accepted by you, Director Zhuo." Lin Qiye and the others' expressions turned grim. Suiqing glared at Bai Li Exen. "Bai Li Exen, are you still human?" Bai Li Exen sneered. "Director Zhuo, you're standing right here. The bodies are in the corner of the venue. The evidence is undeniable. Are you trying to cover for your subordinate in the reserve team?" A black magic circle opened beneath Bai Li Exen's feet. Suiqing's pupils constricted, and he grabbed Bai Li Exen by the collar, instantly disappearing from the spot. In the next moment, blades of swords burst forth from the magic circle, piercing through the spot where Bai Li Exen had just been. Suiqing halted a short distance away, abruptly turning to look at the extremely grim-faced Lin Qiyi, and spoke in a deep voice. Lin Qiyi, do you know what you're doing? The magical robe behind Lin Qiyi fluttered without wind as he calmly looked at Suqing and extended his palm once more. I said he must die here today. 3 consecutive spatial magic circles appeared around Suqing, completely enveloping him. The spatial teleportation was activated in an instant, and the next moment, Suqing's figure was teleported away, disappearing from sight. Just then a flash of green blade light tore through the void, and Suqing forcibly interrupted the spatial teleportation process, appearing a few meters away from Bai Li Exin. Are you crazy? If you really kill Bai Li Exin today, things will be truly irreversible. Suqing shouted while dodging the successive magical traps. Let the military court judge his crimes and let him receive the punishment he deserves. Isn't that better? The punishment he deserves? Lin Qiyi's eyes narrowed. Tell me, what kind of punishment will he receive? Will he be sentenced to death? Suqing was taken aback. No, the Night Watch does not have the death penalty, and besides, he was once an honorary high-ranking member. If the evidence is conclusive, he will be sent to the fasting house to spend the rest of his life. Lin Qiyi sneered, since you won't kill him, then we'll have to do it ourselves. Lin Qiyi's figure flickered and he directly appeared in front of Suqing. Several sealing spells simultaneously activated, trapping him forcefully. Fatty! Lin Qiyi turned to look at Bai Li Pang, who was standing still, and shouted, What are you waiting for? Go kill the person you want to kill. The consequences will bear together. Chapter 447. Goodbye, Xin Qingzhu. Bai Li Pang trembled all over upon hearing those words. He hesitated for a moment, then gritted his teeth and rushed towards the severely injured Bai Li Exin, gripping his golden spear tightly. Bai Li Exin never expected that Lin Qiyi would go to such lengths for Bai Li Pang. As he retreated, he looked at the charging Bai Li Pang, a rare look of panic appearing on his face. The golden spear's light sliced through the air, mere inches away from piercing Bai Li Exin's throat. Ha! At the critical moment, Bai Li Exin sneered, I thought you were different from me, but it seems we are the same kind of person. The spear tip hovered before Bai Li Exin's throat as he glared fiercely at him. You're talking nonsense. Is that so? Your brothers are willing to risk their lives to save you, but what about you? You want to push them into the abyss. Aren't you just as selfish as I am? Bai Li Exin said coldly. Do you know what will happen if you kill me today? As a night watchman, you would assassinate a high-ranking member of the Night Watch. Your team would not only ruin its chances of becoming a special squad, but all of you would also bear heavy crimes, forever imprisoned in the penitentiary from now on. You would have avenged your great hatred, of course, but what about them? Their once bright future would be shattered because of your selfish desires, all at your own hands. Is this the fate they deserve? Bai Li Exin's voice was chillingly calm. Bai Li Pang's hand gripping the spear trembled uncontrollably, his eyes reddening as he stared at Bai Li Exin, struggling internally. Chia, I can't do it. After a moment, Bai Li Pang's knuckles turned white as he slowly lowered the spear, his voice trembling slightly. I can't drag you all down. Seeing this, Bai Li Exin's lips involuntarily curled into a smile. That's right, you should be honest. Puff. Before he could finish, his voice abruptly stopped. Bai Li Exin's expression froze on his face. He slowly lowered his head and saw a black blade piercing through his chest, deep and unfathomable. Soul-severing blade. Bai Li Exin's lips lost all color as he stiffly turned his head, only to see a figure wearing a white fox mask quietly standing behind him. A blade extended from the black ring on his right index finger, piercing through his heart from behind. Talk too damn much. Xin Qingzhu, expressionless, withdrew the soul-severing blade. With his soul pierced, Bai Li Exin completely lost all vitality, collapsing to the ground like a puddle of mud. Bai Li Pang witnessed this scene standing frozen in place. Not far away, Lin Qiyi, who was forcibly holding back Suqing, also saw this scene. His mental energy swept over, clearly recognizing the familiar face beneath the mask. You are... Lin Qiyi's eyes were filled with disbelief. Xin Qingzhu extended his hand and lightly snapped his fingers. Bang! A burst of flames instantly consumed Bai Li Exin's corpse. The red embers slowly rose, casting a blood-red hue on the delicate white fox mask. Pang Pang, the favor I owed you I've repaid, Shin Qingzhu said. He took 2 steps back, lightly leaped, and fell directly through the hollow floor-to-ceiling window, disappearing into the clouds out of sight. Bailey Pang Pang finally came to his senses and hurried to the window, looking down at the layered sea of clouds, but Shin Qingzhu's figure was nowhere to be seen. Brother Zhua, he murmured. Beside him, Zhuqing's straight blade slashed repeatedly, the blue light cutting through dozens of ceiling magic arrays. His gaze fell on the spot where Shin Qingzhu had jumped down, his eyes narrowing as he transformed into a streak of light and pursued. Wait. Stop. Seeing Zhuqing about to chase Shin Qingzhu, Lin Chia and Bailey Pang Pang shouted in unison, their figures swaying to block Zhuqing's path. Lin Chia, what exactly do you want? Zhuqing's eyes flashed with anger. Not only did you kill Bailey Xian in front of me, but now you want to stop me from chasing the assassin? Do you really think I'm just a decoration as your superior? Do you believe I can have you removed from your position with a single word? Go ahead and remove me. Lin Chia said firmly. In any case, I can't let you pass. You. Zhuqing glared at Lin Chia, and after a long moment he lowered his head and cursed, damn it, if you weren't chosen by Yi Fan, I would definitely break your legs today. He sheathed his straight blade with a huff and turned to leave the building. Seeing that he had finally given up on chasing Shin Qingzhu, Lin Chia breathed a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to say something, the magical elements around him receded like a tide, an unprecedented fatigue flooding his soul. He felt his body lighten and he fainted. Chia! Bailey Pang Pang exclaimed, catching Lin Chia's body in a panic as he collapsed. Zhuqing, who had reached the edge of the venue, paused and turned to look back. Seeing everyone gathered around the pale-faced Lin Chia, his lips twitched slightly. After hesitating for a moment, he gritted his teeth and ran back toward Lin Chia. Really, never a moment's peace. Shin Qingzhu's figure fell from the sky, and the surrounding air visibly thickened, as if he were not in free fall but had plunged into water, the air frantically dissipating the kinetic energy from his descent. Finally, he landed steadily on the ground. He looked up at the towering Bailey main building above the clouds, its peak hidden from view, and silently removed his mask. Daring to assassinate Bailey Xian right under the eyes of the Night Watch's high ranks, you have some guts. The ninth seat stepped out from behind a nearby pillar, unable to help but comment. Shin Qingzhu glanced at him. If you want to become the second seat, you need to be bolder in your actions. Isn't that what you said? The ninth seat shook his head helplessly, walking to the car parked by the roadside. As he opened the door, he said, although Bailey Xian wasn't our target this time, he is on the Ancient God Society's bounty list. If Lord Murmur finds out you killed him, he should be quite pleased. If all goes well, your position will rise again. Shin Qingzhu sat in the driver's seat and shrugged. Maybe. The mission is complete. Where do you want to go next? The ninth seat turned to look at him. Shin Qingzhu was taken aback. Aren't we supposed to report back to the society? Why the rush? You've achieved such a great feat. Does it matter if you return a little earlier or later? The ninth seat patted his shoulder and smiled. Young man, don't push yourself too hard. You should relax sometimes. Shin Qingzhu was silent for a moment. Then let's take a stroll around Guangshan. Chapter 448. Someone is waiting for you. Guangshan City, the original base of Team 010. Chao Yuan slowly walked down the stairs. In the living room, Bailey Pang Pang looked up with some concern and asked, has Qi woken up? Not yet, Chao Yuan shook his head. But it's nothing serious, he's probably just too tired. Jialan is in the room with him. All right. Bailey Pang Pang sat back down on the sofa, lowering his head in a daze. Zhuqing glanced at the time, stood up from the sofa and said, since he hasn't woken up yet, let's leave it for now. I'll talk to him properly when I return from the capital. Are you in such a hurry? Qingyu asked in surprise. The headquarters is waiting for me to bring Bailey Xian back for trial. Even though Bailey Xian is dead now, this matter won't just end here. The crimes he committed still need to be verified. Zhuqing turned to look at Miao Su, who was sitting alone in the living room in a daze, and continued. With Miao Su as a witness, the trial process should go relatively smoothly. At the very least, he can't escape charges of bribery and murder. A few hours earlier, while Zhuqing was investigating the scene, he discovered Miao Su, who had been knocked out in a corner. After she woke up, she revealed everything about the Bailey Group and Team 010, becoming one of the key witnesses in the case. "Miao Su, we should go," he called out. Miao Su, who had been staring at the wall filled with red wine, came back to her senses, nodded and slowly walked out of the living room, her eyes slightly red. She walked over to Bai Li Pang Pang, hesitated for a moment and then looked into his eyes and said, "Xiao Tu Ming, don't worry. I will make sure you get justice." "Sister Miao Su." Bai Li Pang Pang looked at her haggard face, feeling a wave of bitterness in his heart. "Thank you. There's one more important thing." Suiqing seemed to remember something and his expression gradually became serious. "I hope you all are mentally prepared." "Mental preparation?" Chao Yuan asked, somewhat confused. "Why? Even if the trial of Bai Li Xin goes smoothly and all his charges are confirmed, what you did still goes against the principles of the Night Watchers." Suiqing spoke solemnly. "Considering you are my subordinates, I will do my best to suppress some matters such as seriously injuring Bai Li Xin, releasing highly dangerous evil beings, and audaciously attacking me, the head of the Special Operations Department." When he said the last sentence, he shot a fierce glare at Bai Li Pang Pang, who immediately lowered his head in embarrassment. "But some things cannot be suppressed, like the fact that you caused a scene at the Bai Li family in front of many ordinary people, destroyed an entire floor and killed 12 restrained object users. Most importantly, you killed Bai Li Jing, who had little connection to this case. Whether it was altering documents or murdering Bai Li Tu Ming, all of it was orchestrated by Bai Li Xin, so legally speaking, Bai Li Jing did not commit any crime. He was just an ordinary person. I know that from a moral standpoint he deserved to die, but not everything can be measured by morality. You should understand this." Bai Li Pang Pang and Chao Yuan were left speechless. "So, what kind of punishment will we face?" And Qingyu slowly asked. "Your punishment is not up to me. It will be decided by the headquarters. I can only try my best to help you reduce it. However, you should prepare for the possibility of losing your qualification to become the 5th Special Team." As Suiqing's voice fell, the entire living room fell into a dead silence. Losing the qualification to become a special team. Bai Li Pang Pang, sitting on the sofa, lowered his head, his hands tightly clenched, overwhelmed by intense self-blame and guilt, his body trembling uncontrollably. A hand rested on his shoulder, gently patting him. Chao Yuan stood behind the sofa and slowly spoke. "What is the likelihood of that happening?" "Objectively speaking, the likelihood is quite high," Suiqing sighed deeply. "The so-called reserve team is a candidate for the special team under observation. The key word is observation. We will assess whether you qualify to become the 5th special team based on your performance during this period, and your character and code of conduct are also important criteria for evaluation. The special team is too important for the Night Watchers. If the higher-ups believe your character is not sufficient to bear the title of a special team, they will naturally revoke your qualification. After all, no one wants to see a special team that goes against the principles of the Night Watchers." Chao Yuan was silent for a moment, took a deep breath and said, "All right, we understand. Until the final judgment from the headquarters comes out, all your tasks are cancelled. Once the results are in, I will come back to inform you. During this period, you are prohibited from leaving Guangshan City. Do you understand?" Suiqing said sternly. "Understood." Suiqing nodded and turned to leave the villa with Miao Su. In the quiet living room, Bai Li Pang Pang looked up at Chao Yuan and Qingyu, his voice a bit hoarse as he said, "I'm sorry." "There's nothing to be sorry about. You are the victim," Chao Yuan comforted him. "Since we drew our swords at the meeting, we were already prepared to give up everything. But we worked so hard to get to this point," Bai Li Pang Pang said in a daze. "Becoming a special team was so close. Honestly, whether or not I become a special team isn't that important to me," Chao Yuan shrugged. "What about Qi? He is supposed to become the special team leader. Do you think he cares?" Chao Yuan interrupted him. Bai Li Pang Pang hesitated for a moment. "It seems he really doesn't care. What about Jialan? Do you think she knows what a special team is? What about Qingyu?" "I think Qi Ye's appeal to me is greater," and Qingyu adjusted her glasses. "How about you guys find a chance to knock him out so I can dissect him?" A bitter smile appeared on Bai Li Pang Pang's face. "You guys are really... Let's not talk about this anymore. You should change your clothes." Chao Yuan patted his shoulder. "Change clothes." Bai Li Pang Pang was taken aback. Why change clothes? Chow Yuan raised an eyebrow and pointed to the wall clock, slowly saying, Did you forget that today in Guangshan someone is waiting for you? Upon hearing this, Bai Li Pang Pang froze in place, memories flooding back of the promise he made with her at the hospital in Gusu. The memory was so clear yet so distant as if from another world. Bai Li Pang Pang lowered his head, the shiny tiles reflecting his face clearly. He stared at himself for a long time before slowly closing his eyes. Chapter 449. Wait for me to come back. Guangzhou Shenzhen City. Light rain. Molly stepped out of the crowded high-speed train station and looked around. Today she was different from usual. She wore a beautiful goose-yellow long dress, her long black hair intricately braided with a piece of red silk. On her feet were a pair of spotless white sneakers, and at her waist hung a small black bag with a Q-version little Zhu Beiji charm swaying gently in the wind. In the chaotic crowd she was breathtakingly beautiful. The fine rain fell on the pavement in front of her, creating ripples in the puddles. Under the dim sky, hurried pedestrians passed by her like a tide. She waited in place for a long time but still did not see that person. She slightly pursed her lips, hesitated for a moment, then opened the transparent umbrella in her hand, carefully avoiding every puddle as she walked toward the nearby bus stop. By the time she boarded the bus, her little white shoes remained clean and tidy. Scan successful. She put her phone back in her bag and looked inside the bus. There weren't many people on this bus. The seats were quite empty. She casually walked to the second-to-last row by the window and sat down, staring blankly out the window. The vehicle slowly started. The fine raindrops carried by the wind fell on the bus window, slowly moving toward the back of the bus, leaving behind tiny beads of water, and the view through the window became increasingly blurred. The driver pressed the music play button, and a soothing melody echoed inside the bus. Oh heavens! Are you secretly watching the joke? Knowing I still can't protect her? Letting us meet? Molly withdrew her gaze from the window and took out a mirror from her bag, carefully examining her reflection. Her makeup was light but perfectly highlighted her delicate features. Molly herself didn't expect that after putting on makeup, she could look so beautiful. She didn't know how to do makeup. Today's look was something she had secretly begged Jing Jing to help her with. Her dress was picked out by Jiang Han after a long night of selection. After confirming that her makeup was fine, she put the mirror back in her bag and turned to look out the window. In the distance it seemed like a figure flashed by. Molly blinked and opened the window a crack. Apart from the passing traffic, there were no other figures. Closing the window, Molly shook her head and leaned her head against the glass, closing her eyes. It would take about 40 minutes to reach the bus stop for the Bailey group, enough time for her to rest. What she didn't notice was that a figure had quietly taken a seat in the last row behind her. Oh heavens! Please don't secretly tell her that on countless quiet nights, someone is thinking of her. The figure sat silently behind Molly, watching her back, a hint of tenderness in his eyes. After hesitating for a moment, a small version of the Tai Chi symbol flashed at his fingertips. In the next moment, a sandalwood safety charm quietly flew from Molly's bag into his hand. A small knife appeared in his hand and he lowered his head, slowly carving something on the back of the sandalwood charm. In the empty bus, a sweet female voice came from the speakers, continuing to play. I hope my efforts can catch up to her. One day I can give her a complete home. But if you arrange for someone else to have her, I will bless her. Oh heavens, don't worry about me for now. Just let her be happy. As the music faded, he finally finished carving the words in his hand and quietly placed it back in Molly's bag. For the remaining 40 minutes he simply watched her back, like her shadow, guarding everything about her in the darkness. Bailey Group Station arrived. The bus stopped at the station and Molly slowly opened her eyes. She glanced at the sign outside, hurriedly stood up and got off the bus. In the hazy drizzle she stood alone at the bus stop. She stood still, looking around, her brows slightly furrowed. With a soft sound the bus doors slowly closed. Molly turned her head, her gaze inadvertently sweeping over the window seat she had just occupied, and she suddenly froze in place. She saw a figure wearing a silly Zhu Beiji mask quietly looking at her through the window from the seat behind where she had just sat. He reached out his hand and pointed at Molly's bag. The vehicle started again, merging into the central lane, and the figure wearing the Zhu Beiji mask gradually disappeared from Molly's sight. Molly finally came to her senses and ran to the edge of the platform, chasing after the bus. The rain fell on her from the slanting wind, soaking her dress. She stared blankly at the red taillights fading away, standing there in confusion. She didn't understand. After a moment she looked down and opened the bag at her waist. The familiar sandalwood safety charm lay quietly at the top of the bag. On the back of the charm, beneath the name Molly, the two characters wife were still there, written with a pen. What was different was that in the corner of this side, there were 2 more lines of text. I'm sorry. Wait for me to come back. Bailey Fatty sat in the back seat of the bus, swaying slightly with the bumpy ride. He gently took off the mask from his face, his eyes slightly red. A shadow suddenly appeared in the seat next to him. Chia, you're awake? Bailey Fatty turned to see the familiar face, secretly wiping away the tears at the corners of his eyes, and asked. Just woke up. I heard you came to find Molly, so I followed to see. Lin Chia sighed. Why not meet her? I think she wouldn't care about your appearance. Bailey Fatty shook his head. It's not about the scar. I just feel that I'm not in a position to give her happiness right now. Confusion appeared in Lin Chia's eyes. Bailey Fatty thought of Lin Chia's straightforward nature and helplessly explained. In the past, when I was still Bailey Tumming, although I said I was just a kid from an ordinary family, in reality no matter what I did I had the Bailey group backing me. From childhood to now I always thought I could protect everything I cherished. But now I realize I was wrong. He raised his head and looked out the window, slowly speaking. If back in Gusu, I had really persuaded her to come back to Guangzhou Shenzhen with me, she might have died under a missile or been killed in the pursuit of the Bailey family. If I had really taken her to meet Bailey Exon, she wouldn't have been able to walk out of Guangzhou Shenzhen alive. I almost caused the girl I liked to die because of my ridiculous confidence. I'm too weak enough that if something really happened, I wouldn't even have the strength to protect the girl I like. He took a deep breath. So until I feel I'm qualified to marry her, I won't disturb her again. When I stand in front of her next time, I hope I have become the person who can protect her for a lifetime. Chapter 450. The possibility is low. Original Team 010's base. Bailey Pang had just pushed open the villa's large door when Jialan suddenly sat up from the sofa, her eyes ablaze with the fire of divination. Lin Chia, who entered right after, saw this scene and couldn't help but twitch his mouth slightly, shaking his head silently. The others noticed Bailey Pong's somewhat listless expression and tactfully refrained from asking about the date's outcome. And Qingyu came out of the kitchen holding a plate of fruit and placed it on the coffee table in the center of the living room. Chia, the one we encountered today wearing the white fox mask, is it? Chao Yuan, sitting on the sofa, seemed to recall something and asked. That's definitely Zhuang Gu. Bailey Pang said with certainty. He uses finger snaps to activate his abilities and even has my soul-severing blade. It must be Zhuang Gu. Lin Chia sat down by the coffee table, sighing. I never expected he was really still alive. I said long ago with the revival jade, he wouldn't die so easily, Bailey Pang replied. However, I can't shake the feeling that that mask looks somewhat familiar, like I've seen it somewhere. Chao Yuan fell into deep thought. After a moment, Chao Yuan and Bailey Pang exchanged glances and spoke in unison. The abstinence hall. Beside them, Lin Chia asked in confusion, You saw him at the abstinence hall? Outside the abstinence hall, we ran into 3 people who were believers, and he was among them, Chao Yuan explained. Later, Pang even tied them up himself, but we didn't see him after that. I saw him too. When we jumped down from the outer wall of the abstinence hall, he was watching us from a distance, Bailey Pang added. The 3 of them exchanged surprised glances, realizing the implications. They never expected that Shin Qingzhu not only survived but had been so close to them. But if that was the case, why hadn't he come to find them? Believers. So Shin Qingzhu must have signed a soul contract with murmurs. Lin Chia's brows furrowed tightly as he recalled the figure of Han Xiaoyun from the 13th seat he had seen in Songnan City. Those forced to join the believers could not betray the organization. Even when Han Xiaoyun died, he was still struggling to seek liberation. Was Shin Qingzhu the same? At that moment, Bailey Pang suddenly froze as if he thought of something, his expression somewhat strange. The soul contract. Perhaps it didn't succeed? Lin Chia and Chao Yuan looked at him in confusion. Theoretically, the revival jade, Not only saves dying lives but also has the ability to ignore boundaries and resist mental attacks. Bailey Pang Pang hesitated to speak. But I'm not sure if the soul contract of the deep believers counts as a mental attack. If it doesn't, then Zhuanggu might have been controlled. But if it is indeed a mental attack, it could be negated by the revival jade? Lin Chia's eyes lit up. So, Xin Qingzhu might not have been controlled at all? But if that's the case, why is he still with the believers? Why hasn't he returned to the Night Watchers? Chao Yuan asked. Lin Chia fell silent. I remember Zhuanggu saying in the underground cave that if he had the chance he would wipe out the entire believers to avenge Li Jia. Bailey Pang Pang couldn't help but ask, do you think he might be an undercover agent in the believers, secretly bringing them down? Chao Yuan frowned slightly. The likelihood is low. Don't we know Xin Qingzhu's personality? With his temper, how could he possibly remain calm and undercover in the believers for so long? Although the possibility is small, it's not impossible, Lin Chia sighed. After all, people can change. As soon as he finished speaking, everyone turned to look at Bailey Pang Pang. After this incident, everyone could feel that Bailey Pang Pang was different from before. He was like a child who had grown up overnight. The naive and silly Bailey Zayate was now a thing of the past. He was more composed now, exuding a sense of independence. But the most noticeable change was that his smile had vanished. Why are you all looking at me like that? Bailey Pong Pong's expression was strange. Nothing. It's just that we're used to you being the lively one, and now you're suddenly so quiet, it's a bit unsettling, Chao Yuan sighed. Jialan nodded in agreement. Bailey Pang Pang looked at the people in front of him, frozen in place. After a moment he scratched his head and chuckled. How about this? Each of you call me Panga once and I'll generously perform a chest-crushing act to lighten the mood? Chao Yuan raised an eyebrow. Chest-crushing? I can do that too. What's so special about it? Bailey Pang Pang was skeptical. How many can you crush? 1. Ha. Just 1. I can crush 1.5. With iron. Meanwhile, Jialan silently picked up a kitchen knife and slammed it down on her forehead. The knife broke. Chao Yuan. Bailey Pang Pang. Jialan, you're amazing. Bailey Pang Pang led the applause. Jialan tossed aside the broken knife, standing with her hands on her hips, proudly raising her head. Lin Chia watched Bailey Pang Pang, who was clapping so hard his hands turned red, and his gaze softened. The corners of his mouth lifted slightly as he joined in the applause. Guangshan City. Neo nightclub. Boom, boom, boom. The dazzling lights swayed in the dim venue, and the pulsating electronic music made the ground tremble slightly. The air, mixed with alcohol and hormones, was filled with countless young people dancing to the rhythm of the music. In the VIP booth at the back of the venue, 5 alluring women surrounded the 9th seat, playfully whispering in his ear. Xin Qingzhu sat alone at the edge of the booth, his gaze fixed on the flickering electronic screen, gently swirling his drink. The 9th seat's gaze fell on him, and he turned to say something to the women beside him. Immediately, the 3 women on his left stood up simultaneously and laughed as they sat down on either side of Xin Qingzhu. Why is this handsome guy drinking alone? Come join us for some fun. One of them leaned her entire body against Xin Qingzhu's arm, speaking softly. Yeah, handsome guy, let's have a drink together. Handsome guy, I need to go to the bathroom. Can you come with me? Xin Qingzhu frowned slightly, glancing at the 3 of them before coldly saying, Get away from me. Chapter 451. I have high hopes for you. The 9th seat, who was watching the scene unfold, showed a look of helplessness in his eyes. He waved his hand at the women and they dispersed, turning back to glare at Xin Qingzhu as they left. Xin Qingzhu shot them a glance and glared back fiercely. You can't go on like this, the 9th seat said, lifting his wine glass and sitting down next to Xin Qingzhu. What can't I do? What we do is a life lived on the edge, requiring a prolonged state of high tension. If we can't find suitable outlets for our emotions, it's easy to develop psychological issues. The 9th seat shook his wine glass as he spoke. Xin Qingzhu calmly replied, I don't need to vent. The 9th seat shook his head. No, everyone needs to vent. No one can keep their tension wound up forever. We need to do things we enjoy to relax our minds. For ordinary people, their outlets might be vacations, watching movies, sleeping, dating, or playing games. But we are different. In our line of work, we are under constant high pressure and no one knows when they might die. We are accustomed to the darker sides of human nature, so our outlets tend to be quite bloody, killing, looting, tormenting. By comparison, using women to vent is already a relatively mild way. I know you are different from others and won't choose those perverse methods, but I didn't expect you to avoid women altogether. That doesn't seem fitting for someone your age, full of vigor. What about the night watchers? They are also under high mental strain, not knowing when they might die. Why don't they need to vent? Shin Qingzhu countered. That's different. The ninth seat shook his head. Do you know why the night watchers operate in teams? Because they need teamwork? That's part of it. Another reason is that when they are under pressure, they have teammates to rely on to share that burden. They can relax through mutual banter and camaraderie. That's why in those outstanding night watcher teams, there are always some jokers. Do you really think they are foolish? From a certain perspective, they are the smartest ones and the ones most emotionally invested in their team. And you're just one person. Being one person is different from being part of a group. Shin Qingzhu stared blankly at the ninth seat as if he understood something. And you? What's your way of venting? Shin Qingzhu couldn't help but ask. The ninth seat smiled slightly and pointed to the voluptuous women who had just left. Beautiful women, fine wine. Who doesn't like that? Although I'm older now, I'm still a man and I still have my desires. When it's time for cold-blooded killing, we kill. When it's time to enjoy, we enjoy. When it's time to be carefree, we are carefree. No unnecessary violence, no intrusive disturbances. I believe this is the best way for us who walk in darkness to live. Shin Qingzhu looked into the ninth seat's eyes and after a long while he slowly spoke. You don't feel like a believer to me, you feel more like... Like what? Shin Qingzhu pondered for a moment and uttered 4 words. A Robin Hood. The ninth seat was taken aback, then he laughed, but slowly his smile faded. When I was young, I loved to read Water Margin. A group of disillusioned people, manipulated by fate, gathered together, disregarding societal views and the constraints of rules. They engaged in robbery and theft, yet they did good deeds to protect the common people. Back then, when Lord Murmurs found me, he detailed what kind of equal and just perfect society would emerge after the evil god descended. I was young, filled with passion, but reality left me battered and bruised. I felt this disgusting society needed correction. And the believers were like the Liangshan heroes bearing the mission of salvation. Lord Murmurs was, of course, the Songjiang in my heart. In the early days of joining the believers, I did meet a few like-minded friends. We regarded the name believers as an honor. But gradually I realized things were not as I imagined. He stared at the wine glass in his hand, his voice somewhat heavy. Some of Lord Murmurs' orders were beyond my understanding, but perhaps out of trust in him I still complied. Yet I found that such orders became increasingly frequent. As time passed, the members of the believers changed several times, and this organization became more and more unfamiliar to me. I simply closed my eyes, refraining from judging what was right or wrong, relying solely on my trust in Lord Murmurs to kill. I don't know when it started, but I could no longer feel myself. The ninth seat raised the wine glass to his lips, lifted his head and drank it all in one go. Shin Qingzhu silently watched his figure, a hint of sorrow appearing in his eyes. The ninth seat was unaware, but Shin Qingzhu understood very well what was happening. What perfect society, what Liangshan heroes, were merely means by which Murmurs lured him into the believers, and that so-called trust in Lord Murmurs was also due to the soul contract planted deep within his soul. He wasn't unwilling to face reality. Rather, under Murmurs' soul manipulation, he subconsciously rejected accepting reality, offering his loyalty unconditionally. His thoughts had essentially been controlled. If it weren't for the heavenly return jade counteracting that soul contract for him, he might have ended up like the ninth seat, completely losing himself and mindlessly serving Murmurs. In the entire believers, there were many like the ninth seat who had been deceived, but the vast majority over time lost themselves in the darkness, becoming true evil believers. Yet despite having his soul manipulated for so many years, the ninth seat still subconsciously held on to his bottom line, which surprised Shin Qingzhu. I can feel that you are different from others. The ninth seat turned to look at Shin Qingzhu, his gaze somewhat vacant as if he were drunk. Your eyes have something that other believers lack. When I first joined the believers, I was like that too. I am old now, but you are still young and your potential is greater than mine. If it were you, perhaps you could really change the current believers, leading the entire group to glory, as Lord Murmurs said. He patted Shin Qingzhu's shoulder, a slight smile on his lips. I have high hopes for you. Shin Qingzhu met his gaze, silently shifting his eyes elsewhere. Chapter 452, Punishment. The night deepened. Lin Chia stepped up the stairs and reached the top floor of the villa. At the edge of the railing, a figure leaned against it, staring blankly at the bright moon in the sky. Can't sleep. Lin Chia walked over to his side and spoke. Bailey Pang Pang turned to look, silently nodding, a bit. What are you thinking about? Bailey Pang Pang gazed at the villa, now shrouded in darkness, and sighed deeply. This villa was personally chosen by me back then. I had to persuade Captain Wei Xiuming to accept it, and it took quite a bit of effort. At that time, the other members of Team 010 were reluctant to move out of that small underground garage because they believed that the Night Watchers shouldn't live such a luxurious life. But who would have thought that just over a year later they would end up like this? I wonder, if I hadn't persuaded them to move out back then, would all of this have happened? Lin Chia shook his head decisively. You simply wanted them to have a better life. There's nothing wrong with that. The mistake lies with them for not resisting the subsequent temptations, and the corruption comes from the Bailey family. Bailey Pang Pang fell silent for a moment before slowly asking, Chia, do you think all Night Watchers are good people? Lin Chia looked into his eyes and shook his head. To say that all Night Watchers are good people is a bit idealistic. In a large forest there are all kinds of birds. There are thousands of Night Watchers, each with different thoughts. Who can guarantee that every single one of them is a good person? But what can be confirmed is that the vast majority of them are good people. Captain Chen Mai Hong Ying, Wen Qima Leng Xian Zhao Kongqing Yuan Gang Wang Lu Fong Yang Hui, Li Diang Qing Kai. We have encountered so many Night Watchers and only a few can be considered bad. Moreover, people cannot simply be categorized as good or bad. Lin Chia raised his head, looking at the bright moonlight in the sky, and slowly said, Good people are not necessarily all good. Bad people are not necessarily all bad. This world is just that complex. On the other side of the city, Shin Qingzhu carried the drunken ninth seat and opened the door to a shabby rental apartment. He placed the ninth seat on the bed, who turned over, murmured a few words, and fell into a deep sleep. Shin Qingzhu watched him for a moment at the door, then turned and walked out of the room, returning to his own room. He entered, locked the door, and did not turn on the lights. Instead, he pulled up the curtains, allowing the bright moonlight to spill into the room, illuminating the floor tiles in a bright white. Shin Qingzhu slowly sat down in the corner. His right index finger gently tapped against the wall behind him, where an inconspicuous black ring glimmered slightly. On the other side of the wall was the bed of the sleeping ninth seat. As long as Shin Qingzhu infused a bit of mental energy into the soul-severing blade, the black soul blade would pierce through the ninth seat's body, completely extinguishing his soul, leaving no chance for resistance. He would die in his sleep without any awareness. But Shin Qingzhu hesitated. Images of the past few days spent with the ninth seat flashed rapidly through his mind, and he struggled internally. To kill or not to kill? The bright moonlight bathed him, making him appear like a statue, motionless. After a long time, he turned his head to look at the bright moon in the sky, taking a deep breath. The finger wearing the ring left the wall. You are an exception, he murmured to himself. A few days later, at the former base of Team 010 in Guangzhou, Shenzhen, Captain Lin Chia of the 5th Reserve Team, team members and Qingyu Chao Yuan Zhan. Now, on behalf of the higher-ups of the Night Watchers, I announce the verdict regarding this incident. Zhuo Qing stood at the entrance of the villa, speaking solemnly. In front of him, Lin Chia and the others stood straight as if back in training camp, waiting for the verdict. Bailey Pang Pang swallowed nervously and raised his hand cautiously. Then, what about me? Stand there and listen carefully. Zhuo Qing glanced at him and continued. After the Intelligence Department's investigation and the military tribunal of the Night Watchers, the former chairman of the Bailey Group and honorary high-ranking member of the Night Watchers, Bailey Exon, is removed from his honorary position for altering confidential Night Watcher documents, murdering Night Watcher Bailey Tumming, and bribing members of Team 010 among other charges. He is banned from all commercial activities under his name and sent to the fasting facility for life imprisonment. Since Bailey Xan is already deceased, the imprisonment is cancelled. As for the members of Team 010, excluding Miao Su, who accepted bribes and abandoned the principles of the Night Watchers, they are stripped of their Night Watcher identities and sent to the fasting facility for life imprisonment. Miao Su, the former vice-captain of Team 010, will take over as the new captain of Team 010 and will immediately rebuild the team. After finishing, he looked up at Bailey Pang. Victim Bailey Tumming, do you have any dissatisfaction with the verdict regarding Bailey Xian and Wei Xiaoming? I am no longer Bailey Tumming, Bailey Pang shook his head. However, I am satisfied with this result. Bailey Xian was already dead, so he naturally had no objections to the outcome. As for Wei Xiaoming and the others, they had been his teammates and had treated him relatively well, so there was no need to go to extremes. Life imprisonment in the fasting facility seemed like a decent result. Suiqing nodded and continued. Next, I will announce the verdict for the 5th Reserve Team. Everyone's hearts immediately tightened. The entire 5th Reserve Team, without cause, triggered a large-scale terrorist attack in the city, killing 13 individuals including Bailey Jing, destroying numerous buildings, and causing extremely adverse social impacts. However, considering the humanitarian perspective, the actions of the 5th Reserve Team can be understood as self-defense to a certain extent. Since the incident did not cause social impact and public assets were not damaged, the following punishment is decided. The qualification for the 5th Reserve Team to become a special team is temporarily revoked, all mission actions are cancelled, and all rights of the reserve team captain are revoked, but the personnel composition is retained, and the right to act freely is preserved. They will immediately go to Huaihai City for comprehensive education, with an indefinite duration. After reading the verdict for the 5th Reserve Team, Suiqing looked up at Lin Chia. Chao Yuan and the others sighed silently, their expressions somewhat dejected. In the end, they still lost the qualification to become a special team. Only Lin Chia and N Qingyu exchanged a glance, their brows slightly furrowed as if pondering something. Suiqing noticed their expressions and a faint smile flickered across his face as he slowly spoke. Captain Lin Chia, do you have any questions regarding this punishment?